adamitam. One should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words, ahimsa. One should learn forbearance even in face of provocation from others, shantir. One should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others, arjavam. One should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization, and one must submit himself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask relevant questions, acharya pasanam. In order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulative principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. Socham. One must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. Staryam. One should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. Atma vinigraha. One should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of his body. Indriyarte suvairagam. One should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. Anahankara. One should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There is no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries of a material body. The best course is to find out the means by which one may regain his spiritual identity. Janma mityu jara vyadhi dukkha darshanam. One should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement, ashakti. One should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. Putradara Gihadisra. Anabhisvam Putradara Gihadisra. Okay, 15. One should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables, knowing that such feelings are just created by the mind. Dityam cha samachitatvam. Okay, Istani Stopa too also. Okay. One should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality Godhead, Shri Krishna, and serve him with rapt attention. Maichananya Yogina, Bhakti Ravyabhicharana. One should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere, favorable for spiritual culture. And one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. Vivikta Janasevitam. Vivikta Janasevitam. Arati Janasamsevitam. And last, one should become a scientist or philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam. Tattva Jnana Artha Darshanam. So these are the 18 points of the process or the culture of developing knowledge. And these 18 items combine to form a gradual process by which real knowledge can be developed. Except for these 18, everything else is considered nescience or ignorance. So yesterday and the day before, we covered humility and nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, cleanliness, steadiness. So now we're beginning false ego. False ego means accepting this body as oneself. When one understands that he is not his body and the spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 1.4.10 is said, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. I am spirit. This I am, the sense of self, also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. This sense of I am is ego, but when the sense of I am is applied to this false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say that we should give up our ego, but we cannot give up our ego because ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with the body. So here's a major difference between the Mayavad philosophy and Vaishnava philosophy. The Mayavadis always say you have to kill your ego. But Vaishnavas say you have to purify the conception of ego. When we identify that the I am is the ego, when we identify with the body, it's called false ego. When we identify as the eternal servant of Krishna, it's the real ego. It's the real I am. Everything relationship to the false ego is false. So I am this body, I am American, I am educated in such and such a school, I am a member of this family, I am this, I am that. All those false identifications are called upadis. Sarva upadi vinir muktam tatparat mena nirmalam. Rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. So, sarva upadi vinir muktam. One should give up association, give up identification with the false upadis. Upadi means identifying with something that is not you and never was you. At no time were you this body. We've discussed that many times. And you're not eternally a member of this particular family. You already had many families in previous lives. And if you continue in the material world, you'll have many other families. So which family are you a part of? The one you had 10 lifetimes ago, the one you have now, the one you'll have 10 lifetimes in the future. So you cannot say I'm this body. So I am the owner of this house. How long are you going to own the house? 10 years, 50 years? Then someone else will be the owner of the house. Then I am the owner of this car. Well, how long are you going to own the car? Just a few years, then you'll junk it and get another car. So all these I ams associated with temporary material things are called false ego. As long as we identify in this way, one cannot engage in pure devotional service. These upadis, false identifications, are obstacles on the path of pure devotion. Therefore, sarva upadi vinirmuktam tatparat vena nirmalam. One must become nirmala, cleansed of these false identifications. Hishikena Hishikesha Sevanam. We are the eternal servant of Rishikesha, Rishika Isha. He's the Isha, he's the controller of the Rishikas, the senses. So this body that we have has 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. The Lord is the owner of them. He's the Isha, Rishika Isha. And Rishikena, he's the owner also of the body. So the body, there's the body and the senses. The body is the vehicle, and the senses are the instruments by which we engage in sense enjoyment. Now, if we use the senses to please Krishna, then there's no karmic reactions. If we use the senses for personal sense enjoyment, you become a victim of karma and bondage, entanglement in the material world. So, sarvapadi vinir muktam tatparat vena nirmalam hishikena hishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. So bhakti is that service that you render free from all the false identifications, the sarva upadis. And with the recognition that your body and your senses belong to Krishna and should only be used in the service of Krishna. That is real ego. Ahankar. Aham Brahmasmi. That's called real ego. Ahankar is the false ego. I am a product of material nature. I identify with cars and this body and families and ethnicity and nationality and so forth. So all those upadhis are obstacles on the path of devotional service. Yeah.
We do have to identify ourselves by our name and all that.
When you get initiated, you receive a spiritual name. You understand why?
So, our whatever name the parents put in, we are trying to get away from the bounds of
initiation, you receive a spiritual name. Now, sometimes, if you're born in India, you get a spiritual name at birth, because families are in that tradition. But, like for example, there are many people in India that have spiritual names, but they're not devotees, right? Someone could be a murderer and his name is Gopal, you know. Someone can be an atheist and his name is Hari, you know. So initiation is rebirth, but it's not. And we have birth. You have a seminal birth, and you have a spiritual birth. So birth from the family is a seminal birth, and birth in devotional service by initiation of a bona fide spiritual master is spiritual birth. You're born into Achyuta Gotra, Krishna's transcendental family, you know.
But even in other legal documents, we have to say that this house is mine, I'm paying mortgage. It's sort of a legal...
Well, I mean, you sign a legal document. You're renting an apartment. Is the apartment yours?
Prabhu, I completely agree with you. But sometimes when people ask us this question, we are making a mistake, right? We are, even though we know...
Which question?
Let's say, does this house belong to you if there is a legal document?
No, well, you correctly say, this house belongs to Krishna, and I'm simply the steward of it.
That's personally what I say as well, that, we are...
Just like in India, legally the temple belongs to the deity. In the United States they don't have that, but in India they have it. The temple belongs to the deity. Therefore, once a deity is established in a building, even if people want to evict you, they can't. Because it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the deity. Do you think they could evict Balaji from Tirupati? No, they couldn't. Because it doesn't belong to the Tirupati Devastan, it belongs to Balaji. And Balaji is only a renter. It actually belongs to Varaha. You see? He's only paying rent. Yeah. So, yeah, we might sign a document, we might be legally the owner of something, but we should understand ourselves. I don't really own this. This belongs to Krishna. Everything belongs to Krishna. Sarvaloka Maheshwara. He is the Maheshwara of Sarvaloka, of everything, including ourselves, our bodies and everything. Hrishikesha, our senses. Hrishikena, this body. So what are we doing? We are correcting all the false cultural cliches that we have been accepting as truth, but actually they're false. Right? So even though you sign a paper, yes, you're the owner of this property, you understand this property actually belongs to Krishna. And I should use it only in Krishna's service. Now someone says, no, in my house, the man is the king of his house. And therefore in the house, he can do whatever he wants. No one can tell him what to do. But that, of course, is crazy. That means the fundamental understanding is wrong. Everything belongs to Krishna. We have to begin from that understanding. And then knowledge is how to use everything in Krishna's service. That's what real knowledge is. That's why anything beyond these 18 points of knowledge is actually ajnana, ignorance. Etaj jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yad ato yata. Only these 18 points are true. Anything outside of these 18 points are Maya. So if you study, C++ programming in the college, it's actually Maya, because it's taking your mind off of Krishna. Now, maybe you can study it and learn how to do it, and then use it to make a program by which people learn about Bhagavad Gita. Then you're correctly using it. But if you're thinking, I'm going to do C++, then I'm going to get a job in Microsoft, then I'm going to make a lot of money, and I'm going to use the money to go to Las Vegas for a vacation, and Cancun for a vacation, and I'm going to buy houses, and in the house I'm going to drink the best wine and think, well, all of that is Maya. All of that is illusion. Okay. Now, we'll continue. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. So, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Dosana Darshanam. Dukkha is suffering. Dosha means fault. Dukkha Dosana Darshanam. Darshan means philosophy or understanding correctly. One should understand correctly that there's a fault in this dukkha, janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi. There's a fault in the suffering caused by birth, old age, disease, and death. What is the fault? Let's discuss that. Why does it say there's a dosa? There's a fault. Not dosa, the one you eat, but dosa. Why do they say there's a fault? Wait a minute. Let's get like this. What you say?
Because they are all temporary and they take you away. They bind you to the material world. So that's why it is.
Okay, like related to a real and false ego.
Yeah, they separate you from real ego into false ego by associating with these materialistic bondages.
Yes. See, the real ego, Ham Brahmasmi, I am soul, right? And and my individual soul is the eternal servant of Krishna. Jivera Swarupahaya, Nityera Krishna Das, right? My real identity is Krishna Das. Or as it says, Dasabhuto Harir Eva Nanyasya Eva Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. So, birth, death, old age, disease, suffering are pertinent to what? Are they related to what? Are they related to the soul or to the body? Therefore, body is not me. If I identify with birth, old age, disease, and death, and suffering of the body, that means I'm misidentifying. Now, what's the difference between the soul and the body? Body is born at some time and disappears. The soul is never born and never dies. Right? The body is temporary, the soul is eternal. The body is subject to the modes of material nature, the soul is not. The body is always changing, the soul is never changed. The body can be injured, the soul cannot be injured in any way. So when we go down the list of all the differences between the body and the soul, there are vast differences. So as long as we identify with the body, we become entangled in suffering, because the body is subject to the laws of material nature. But if we use the body in the service of Krishna, then we mitigate vast amount of suffering in our life. The suffering is caused by misusing the body for sinful activities. That's what causes suffering. And what are the 4 pillars of sinful activity? Meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex. So, if we don't engage in those 4 things, you eliminate 95% of suffering in life. The other 5% is due to, you might eliminate, let's say, but due to the weakness of the mind, sometimes you vacillate back to it. So, and of course, the mind has, okay, you don't want to put Bhagavad Gita on the ground there. Yeah. And of course, Bhagavad Gita, and of course, the soul has limited free will. So when we say 95% of problems go away, there's still a possibility that you can decide at any moment to engage in some kind of sinful activity again. And that'll incur more. Now, just by living, we commit sins. Just by breathing, you kill living entities. By driving your car, you kill living entities. By eating, you kill living entities. So we're committing all kinds of sins, consciously and unconsciously. But if we only eat to serve Krishna, that means eat only prasadam. We only drive to come to the temple or to go to work to earn an honest living and come back to the house, then go to the temple. In other words, our goal, our whole life is Daiva Varnashram, related around service to the deity. Like when we go to work, we're working so we can have an honest living, so that we have our family can live near the temple and come easily every day to the temple, right? So, therefore, everything we do is related to Krishna. Right? Of course, if you go to the New Year's Eve party, you're drinking champagne and eating meat, that has no relationship with Krishna. So you use the car to do that, and you use your money to do that. Well, all that incurs sinful reactions. But if you use the car to go to work and then come to the temple, and you're not interested in sense gratification, rather you're interested in pleasing the deity by all your acts and thoughts, then all the killing you do while you're driving to work and driving back, when you're eating, when you're turning a fire on to cook food, all that killing, you're not responsible for it. Therefore, Krishna says, Sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam saranam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshisyami ma suchaha. See, aham tvam sarva papebhyo, I will protect you from all sinful reactions incurred in the process of performing devotional service. Just like Arjuna is killing his guru, Dronacharya. He's killing the grandsire of the entire Kuru dynasty, Bhisma Pitamaha. But there's no sin involved. Now, if you kill your guru normally, that's the worst sin. That's Guru Hadva. You go to the worst part of hell. Arjuna kills his guru and he's glorified, because he only does it under the order of Krishna. It's not a whimsical thing. It's not that he's mad at his guru, so he's going to kill him. Whereas Indra killed his guru, and he immediately got the sinful reaction. Now, when you immediately get a sinful reaction, that means Krishna is very kind to you. So, because Indra is a devata, and he's actually a servant of Krishna, although he makes big mistakes, but as soon as he makes a mistake, he gets the reaction. That's Krishna's special mercy. If Krishna doesn't like you, then the action is slow motion. 10 years later, you get a devastating reaction. You can't figure out, you don't see the correlation between what you did 10 years before and what's happening now. You get totally devastated. You're confused. See? So, the laws of karma are very complicated to understand. we could be suffering today for something we did 2 lifetimes ago. How can you correlate the two? See? It's only when you get the reaction immediately after doing something wrong that you can see the cause-effect. But that's only in the case of devotees, of servants of Krishna, to correct them right away. When they are nonsense people, then the action is delayed, the reaction is delayed, and then they're more confused. They can't figure out, why did this happen? Just like sometimes people say, why do bad things happen to good people? Because they're not completely good. Because they made mistakes in the past, but it was far in the past, so they don't see the relationship between the two. Yeah. Yeah.
Blaming every single suffering that we undergo on our previous karma, that is also not the wisest thing to do. We cannot just speculate that I must have done something wrong in my previous jnana, that's why I'm suffering right now. It's not good to speculate that way as well.
Not really. In the case of Arjuna, and the Pandavas, why did they have to go into exile? Why did they have to stay incognito? Why did they have to fight the battle of Kurukshetra? Arjuna was a devotee. He did not do anything wrong. But he was an instrument. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. He's an instrument for Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. But we should never not think of ourselves like that. Arjuna is the eternal associate of Krishna. He's never Gudakesha. He's never subjected to ignorance and forgetfulness of Krishna. He's always with Krishna. But he was put in that position in order for Krishna to speak the Bhagavad Gita. We should not think like that about ourselves. We should see ourselves as fallen souls who have made mistakes in the past, and whatever suffering we're receiving now, it's just a token of what we should get. It would have been much worse if we were not devotees. It would have been much worse.
It's a recompense for our past.
A token. It's reduced significantly because we're engaged in Krishna's service, so that it doesn't interfere with our service. But when you get the full brunt of sinful reaction from a previous life, it stops everything you're doing. You know. Okay. So it says, one should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. There's long description in Srimad Bhagavatam of the experience of the baby in the womb of the mother. If you want to know what happened to you when you were in the womb of your mother, or if you want to know what happens to the baby you're expecting now in the womb of the mother, you read this part of the Bhagavatam. It is absolutely horrendous. That's why all the babies are born crying. You ever see a baby that was not born crying?
As soon as you're in the womb, you remember, but as soon as you come out, you forget out.
Well, thank God you forget, otherwise you'd be distressed your whole life.
Because of Maya.
Yes. Yes. Our disease is forgetfulness. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child staying in the womb of the mother, is suffering. Its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful. Because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, we do not make any solution to the repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. Yeah, the description of what happens to you at death is also graphically described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. These should be discussed. And as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. Yeah, you know what it's like to get old, and you know what it's like to get sick. That at least you have experience of. No one wants to be diseased, and no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there's no impetus for us for making advancement in spiritual life. Unless we are fully cognizant of janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosana darshanam. Darshanam means philosophical understanding. We should be able to see the fault, the dosha of dukkha, janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi. If not, there's no impetus, there's no, let's say, inspiration for our making advancement in spiritual life. We think, oh, you know, I can deal with this. I'll arrange this, I'll arrange that, you know, and everything will be all right. TK. Yeah, if I have a heart attack, I'll get bypass surgery. If my liver is no good, I'll get liver transplant. If my heart goes out, I'll get heart transplant. Right? If my brain goes out, well, I'm brainless anyway, it doesn't matter, you know. Yeah, I don't need a brain. I just need a stomach so I can eat, you know. So there's all crazy understandings of life. So, suffering and the realization of suffering is an impetus, or it's inspiration to understand through spiritual knowledge how to get out of the suffering. You can't understand through material knowledge how to get out of understanding. Yeah, you get out by taking a drug, so you lose cognizance of the suffering. Yeah, just like one time I saw a person who took LSD. Yeah, and I saw him put his hand on an electric hot plate that was on, right? But he didn't take it away right away. He left it there, and then his hand started burning. And then after a little while, he realized his hand was burning and took it off. Then we had to take him to the hospital. You know, his hand was worse than third-degree burn. But how could he keep his hand there? Because he was so drugged. So when people are drugged, either with a chemical drug or the drug of sense gratification, they don't realize they're suffering. Right? I don't want to give too many graphic examples. There are very terrible examples of this. And I just gave you one, but there are many others even worse than that. People do not realize they're suffering, or they try and mitigate the suffering by some artificial means, by taking a drug. Right? So why do you think there's so many bars in the United States? Huh? Yeah, they're trying to forget their misery. Why do you think, you walk in the Safeway, there's huge aisles of wine and beer. Right? Yeah. You go to buy gasoline, and there's beer, there's wine, there's everything, right? Then you go to now they have these big liquor stores, right? Yeah, liquor from all over the world, high content alcohol liquid, and they're doing good business. Why? People are trying to drown their sorrows. Right. And then now, why is there a marijuana store in Washington State? People are trying to forget their misery. They want to feel happy, because they want to forget material life for a little bit. So by doing that, actually, we should see that suffering is a good thing, because it makes us think seriously about the nature of life. The less we suffer, the less we are inspired to find out why we're suffering. But everyone is suffering, and the only way you can lessen the suffering is by dulling the brain. Just like a tree is a living being. But the brain of the tree is so dull that it can stand there and not complain for hundreds of years. Even though it's freezing cold, even though the wind is blowing, even though it's scorching hot, it doesn't complain. But if you stood there, even for 1 hour, you would complain. You see? So you have to understand that. And the child is suffering tremendously in the womb. Right? He can't wait to get out. It's like this, praying. If you look at the X-ray of the child, and the child is like this. Actually, the child is praying, "Get me out of here."
He's
Helpless. Right. He's praying, "Please, Krishna, you get me out of here. I'll serve you the rest of your life, the rest of my life." But the trauma of getting out, like if you look, if it's a natural birth, then when the child comes out, head first, the head is contracted, and there's a big red line where it pushed out of the womb, and it contracted the head. But the head of the child is very soft. The brain has not hardened yet, and the head is deformed. And then after a couple of days, it comes back natural, and that red line where it was squeezed the hardest goes away. And there's a hole at the top of the head also. It's very soft and it's big in the child's head. But then, as we grow older, the hole becomes like a pinpoint. Yeah, it's called Brahmarandra. See? So, like, if I put your head in a vice and I started squeezing it right now, you'd go crazy. The only way the child can stand that squeezing and the excruciating pain is because the head is very soft. Therefore, it deforms, and then it comes back to a normal position. You have to think about this. You know, I don't know if anyone's ever seen childbirth, because women don't really see it; they suffer it, you know. But if you're standing there watching it, it's excruciating pain for the woman and for the child. Excruciating pain. And when you see the newborn child, you see the head is all out of shape because of the squeezing. Of course, now the cesarean C-section births, it's not quite as bad. It's bad for the wife. It's not quite as bad for the child, but it's still full of suffering. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These four things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna, prasadam. Have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in it. These four things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together Hare Krishna. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these four principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. You don't have to become a sannyasi. You're already sannyasi in the home.
You keep doing work and you keep chanting.
Huh?
You keep doing all work but you keep chanting.
Yes. But if it is not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Well, you don't abandon family life if you still have young children, but you tolerate it until the children are grown and married, and therefore, when the right moment comes, you can leave without any attachment. That's if it's unfavorable. If it's favorable, then you don't have to leave. But you never leave in the middle of the experience, because if you leave your children and your wife, or if the wife leaves the husband and the children, that's extremely sinful, and it affects them psychologically. They'll never be happy after that, because it's an extremely sinful thing to do, to leave dependents and just go off. And you'll see in the newspaper many times, a mother leaves her child alone to go to the nightclub to dance, and then either the child dies or a neighbor hears the child crying and calls the police. Police come, see the mother's not there. When they find the mother drunk in the nightclub, they arrest her, take the child away, and charge her with child neglect. You see it in the newspaper. It happens almost every day in the United States somewhere.
Yes, the culture is totally different.
It happens in India also. What are you talking about? No. You don't. It's not reported as much in India. No. It's happening just as much in India as it's happening here. Maybe not amongst the higher classes in India, but definitely happens there also. You know.
Is it because of the Varna?
There's different types of dynamics in India. Like in the beggar class, sometimes when a child is born, they purposely mutilate the child so that they can take it out and show it to the public and collect money. There are many, many strange things happening in India also. It's not that, it's paradise on earth. It's not.
I don't think it's paradise, but still things are less as compared to US.
No, I'm telling you, they're not. It's just as bad. It may be worse in some ways. You come from a good background, but not everybody comes from a good background in India. And many poor people being taken advantage of there. And strange things happen. I mean, you hear about it in the newspaper. There's honor killings, even amongst the Hindus. Yeah. Honor killings. Yes.
What is that I seen in our Telugu newspaper? 4 new baby girls, they put them in the dirty water in India. They go pass through the small canal, whatever it is called. They throw them over there.
Well, that's the open sewer in the villages. No, I mean, I love India, but you have to tell the truth also. The same things are happening everywhere. This is Kali Yuga. This is not Satya Yuga. Yeah. Okay. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life, because in this world, one can never be fully happy or fully miserable. Now, this is a very profound statement. One must be detached from the happiness and distress of family life. Because in this world, one can never be fully happy or fully miserable. So, if you're attached, you say, oh, I got married to be happy for the rest of my life. Well, you're in for a big surprise. It's not going to be like that. No. There is a guarantee. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. Concomitant means it's part of material life. You cannot escape it. Sukha and dukkha is part of material life. You cannot escape it. One should learn to tolerate. You must become dhira. Dhiras tatra namuyate. As advised in Bhagavad Gita, one can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress, so one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. So if you're detached, the material way of life, you want to be happy all the time. Everyone's working to be happy. No one's working to be miserable, but yet misery arrives. So one must be detached from this materialistic way of life. You have to be realistic. You have to know, as long as you have a body, as long as you're in the material world, there's going to be happiness and distress. There's going to be sukha and dukkha. It's going to be a mixed bag. It's never going to be all sukha. It's never going to be all dukkha. It's always going to be mixed.
Mind package.
Yes, exactly. So one must be equipoised. One must keep the equilibrium of the mind. Sama dukkha.
One should be happy in happiness, one should be
Sukhe dukkhe.
number.
Krita. Okay, in the second chapter it says, Labo labo jaya jaya. Yes. So, in success or failure, happiness or distress, one must keep the equilibrium of the mind. The second chapter, verse number 'Sukhe dukkhe samakritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yudaya yujasva naiva papam avapsyasi.' Second chapter, 38th verse. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting because Krishna desires the battle. There's no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or gain, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness.
Follow the instruction of Lord.
Yes, that everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna as transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obligated to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone, as one is in the ordinary course of activities. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone. Not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. Bhagavatam 11.5.41. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse, and the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. 2:38, very profound verse. Sukhe dukkhe krite same kritva labha labho jaya jaya tato yudaya yushatsva naiva papam avapsyasi. Okay. One should learn to tolerate, as advised in the Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress. So one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something desirable, we are very happy, and when we get something undesirable, we are distressed. But if we are actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach that stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotional service, right? Unbreakable devotional service. 14:26. Mam chayo vibicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. 14:26. Devotional service, or nityam bhagavata sevaya. Right? Devotional service to Krishna without deviation means engaging oneself in the 9 processes of devotional service: chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering respect, etc. As described in the last verse of the 9th chapter. That process should be followed. Naturally, when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. That would be against his grain. One may test himself by saying how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. Aratir janasamsadi. One avoids association of materialistic people. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema going or enjoying some social function because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subject, but according to Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical speculation have no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to Bhagavad Gita, one should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here. As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that Bhakti Yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, one must consider the relationship between the super soul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the super soul cannot be one, at least not in the Bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So Bhakti, or devotional service, is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is explained, Vedanti tattvavidas tattvam yajganamadvayam. Those who are actually knowers of the Absolute Truth know that the self is realized in three different phases as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So its self here is capitalized. It's talking about Krishna, who's known in three phases, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That is the perfection of knowledge. Beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the Supreme Truth, the Absolute Personality of Godhead, this process is just like a staircase, beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now, on this staircase, there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second or the third floor, etc. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he would be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. So this is the problem of Ravana, of all the demons. They have knowledge, but they don't have humility. They have knowledge, but they're trying to use that knowledge to kill Krishna. Just like Ravana and Indrajit are doing Vedic yagyas with Brahmanas, but to kill Krishna. So, they're doing Vedic yagyas, they're saying the mantras of the Samaveda and so forth, but in order to get the power to kill Krishna. So they will just be frustrated and they don't really have any knowledge. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. Therefore, Amanditvan was the first point. One must be respectful of all the living entities and learn to give proper respect and become a perfect gentleman or gentlewoman and learn to give proper respect and not seek to be honored for the service one does. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he would be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks, I am God, because of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amadidvam, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth. So, due to rebellion against Krishna, one becomes subordinate to material nature. Well, material nature is also Krishna. So either you're surrendered to him in his beautiful, loving form as Sham Sundar, or you'll surrender to him in his form of material nature, the Virat Rupa. Right? Either way, you're going to be subordinate and surrendered. Okay. So, then, let's have some homework here. Let's connect this purport. Let's do what I said yesterday. You have the Isopanisad 18 points connected to Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter 8 to 12 verses. We've already done that, right? Next point is you connect the Bhagavad Gita 18 points to the explanation, each one to the explanation in the purport. All right? So how do you do that? You have to do it physically. You have to, it'll take pages and pages. You extract, you get the 18, you get the Bhagavad, you get the Isopanisad, connect it to the Bhagavad Gita, Sanskrit, right? And then you connect that to the explanation in the purport. So it's going to require pages. But then you're ready to, study it. Yeah, and understand it. Any questions? As long as there's a material creation.
So that's only for one whole kalpa with that universe exists, and then
It disappears. It's absorbed back into Mahavishnu.
And then when Lord Vishnu exhales, at that time the Virat Rupa takes place again.
Yes. The Virat Rupa is temporary manifestation. It's not eternal. That's explained in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Any other questions?